Well, who's bad and who's worse? That's the question bettors have to ask themselves when analyzing tonight's game. Philadelphia Eagles going on the road to play the New Orleans Saints. BETDAQ currently offering 3 point spread markets in this game. New Orleans -2.5, -3, and -3.5 all being offered. Total in this game is 52.5. Listen, both these teams extremely disappointing. Both expected to be contenders in the NFC heading into the year. Saints now sit at 2-5. The Eagles are 3-4. But more importantly, from a bettor's perspective, Philadelphia has been the absolute worst team in the NFL to back this season. They've only covered once in their 7 games, 5-1 against the spread. Yet, they're getting a lot of love this week. People seem to think the Eagles are going to be able to pull it together and play a good game tonight in New Orleans. We mentioned the 3 markets being offered on BETDAQ. The first market that was offered was New Orleans -3.5. So since then, a New Orleans -3 and New Orleans -2.5 market has gone up. So we've seen some Philadelphia movement there. In Vegas, we've seen the same thing. Philadelphia has been a popular public bet in Vegas all week. I'm just wondering why. I don't know. I guess a lot of it has to do with the fact that New Orleans does have the worst defense in the league. I understand that. And they do, by the way. You can't say many things for certain in the NFL, but you can say for certain that the New Orleans Saints have the single worst defense in the National Football League. 32nd dead last in the league in yards allowed. Not only that, not only are they last in yards allowed, they are last by a wide margin. The Saints currently giving up 474 yards per game. They've allowed at least 400 yards in every game this year, as amazing as that is. Buffalo, 31st in the league in yards allowed, the next worst defense, allowing 418 yards a game. Let me repeat that. The Saints allowing 476, Buffalo allowing 418. Saints allowing 474, Buffalo allowing 418. What a big difference that is, 2 yards. 56 more yards per game, in other words. The Saints are allowing 56 yards per game more than any other defense in the league. That is absolutely incredible. Dead last in the league in total defense. Dead last in the league in rush defense. Next to last in pass defense. 30th in points allowed. There's just no bright spot for the New Orleans Saints defense. Good thing for them. Their offense is just about as good as their defense is bad. They do lead the league in pass yards per game. Drew Brees throwing for 316 yards a game. We know the Saints are much better at home. So I think the Eagles are in a tough spot here. I do like New Orleans in this game. I'm backing New Orleans, and I got them at the bad price. I'm actually backing New Orleans -3.5, which, by the way, Saints at -3.5 can be had at 232 on BETDAQ right now. And my bet has more to do with my lack of faith in Philadelphia than it does my faith in New Orleans, because I recognize how bad that Saints defense is. Now, I do have great faith in the Saints offense, and there's not one part of this Philadelphia team that I have any faith at all in right now. The Eagles are disintegrating. This team has gotten worse and worse. Head coach Andy Reid a couple of weeks ago fired defensive coordinator Juan Castillo, even though the defense had outplayed the offense this season. And firing Juan Castillo did not have the desired effect, because the Eagles went out and played their worst defensive game of the year last week. They were shredded by the Atlanta Falcons. So this week, they've been calling players-only meetings. We know what happens. As soon as you hear about those players-only meetings, disaster is right around the corner. They can't get it fixed. The coaches can't get it fixed. The players try to band together, call each other out. We'll see if that works. We've seen in professional sports before. Usually that does not work. To me, the Eagles look like they've stopped playing hard for Andy Reid. I'm not saying they've completely stopped trying, but their effort does not look like it matches their opponents on a week-in and week-out basis. Andy Reid, not sure if he's still able to motivate this team. His message might have grown stale. He is, after all, the longest tenured coach in the NFL. But what has to be more disturbing for Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles owner who's responsible for hiring and firing Andy Reid, is the fact that the offense, which is Reid's baby. I mean, Andy Reid, an offensive guy, and ever since Reid's been there, no matter how good or bad the Eagles have been, they've had a pretty good offense. This year that has not been the case. 28th in the league in points scored. Now, we do expect the Philadelphia offense to have some more success tonight. We talked about how bad the Saints defense is. If you can't score against the Saints, you can't score against anybody. And I expect Philadelphia to move the ball. I expect them to score 24, 28, maybe even 30 points, but it's not going to be enough, because the Eagles' defense is awful. I believe judging from the results, based on what we saw last week, they don't appear to be improving. And a struggling defense, a defense that's suffering maybe a confidence crisis, a defense that might not be putting forth full effort, a defense that just lost their defensive coordinator, a defense that's searching for answers, looking for something. The last place in the world you want to send that defense is the Superdome on Monday night to face this New Orleans Saints offense. New Orleans is going to absolutely roll through this Philadelphia defense. I don't even think the Eagles are going to be a speed bump here. Expect a high-scoring game, 52.5 is a total. I lean towards the over, even though, as we mentioned, Philadelphia 28th in the league in points scored. I imagine that's why we're seeing the total hover at 52.5 instead of something like 55 or 6. But I do think the Eagles offense is going to break out of that funk a little bit tonight. I do not think they're going to be able to stay with the New Orleans Saints. I do like New Orleans minus 3.5 in this game. But hey, some better prices being offered now. I like the sounds of New Orleans minus 2.5 a lot better. Unfortunately, I can't get involved due to the laws and things of that nature, blah, blah, blah. I can't get involved on BETDAQ on the betting exchange. Wish I could, but I'm stuck with my New Orleans minus 3.5 bet. So if you want to join me again, Saints can be had at 232 at that price. I do like the Saints to cover 3.5. 2-2 this week, so we'll see. This is for profitability for me. I'll be watching tonight's game with great interest, and I know you probably will be too.